Simon Cowell dropped his pen. The audience froze. The stage fell into absolute silence. No one understood what was happening. Not the producers. Not the other judges. Not even the cameras knew where to focus. Because what was unfolding on that stage wasn't a performance. It was a reckoning. A 73-year-old man stood alone under the spotlight, trembling. And somewhere in the front row, his son, a man he hadn't spoken to in 30 years, was rising to his feet with tears streaming down his face. This wasn't a talent show anymore. This was a father's last chance. But how did we get here? What brought a retired judge to the America's Got Talent stage? And why did Simon Cowell, the man known for his brutal honesty and unshakable composure, stop everything? Let me take you back to where it all began. His name was Richard Moore. For 41 years, he served as a federal judge in Boston. He sent criminals to prison. He freed the innocent. He upheld the law with an iron hand and an unwavering voice. In the courtroom, everyone respected him. Everyone feared him. His verdicts were final. His words carried the weight of justice itself. But at home, things were different. So painfully different. Richard was never cruel. He was simply absent. The weight of his work consumed him. Late nights reviewing case files. Weekends spent preparing verdicts. His son, Daniel, grew up watching his father through glass. Present but unreachable. They lived in the same house but existed in different worlds. Daniel remembered birthdays where his father arrived late. Baseball games where the seat next to his mother stayed empty. Graduation day, when Richard missed the ceremony. Every milestone. Incomplete. When Daniel turned 18, he made a decision that would haunt both of them for decades. He left. No fight. No dramatic confrontation. Just a letter on the kitchen table that read, "I can't wait for a father who was never there. Goodbye." Richard came home that evening to an empty house and a folded piece of paper. He read that letter 1,000 times. He kept it in his desk drawer, folded and worn. But he never called. He never chased. Because Richard Moore, the man who could sentence a person to life in prison, didn't know how to say 3 simple words: "I am sorry." 30 years passed. 30 years of silence. 30 years of regret eating away at a man who judged everyone except himself. But fate, it seems, had one more verdict to deliver. Daniel built his own life far from Boston. He moved to Chicago. He became a music teacher, spending his days nurturing young talent. He married Sarah and had 2 daughters, Emma and Grace, who grew up hearing almost nothing about their grandfather. Daniel told himself he didn't need his father. He told himself the wound had healed. But every Father's Day, when his daughters made cards, the wound reopened. Every Christmas morning, it bled again. The absence of Richard Moore was a ghost that never stopped haunting. Then, 6 months ago, Richard received news that changed everything. Terminal lung cancer. Stage 4. 6 months to live. For the first time in his life, Richard Moore felt powerless. No courtroom could save him. No law could grant him more time. The gavel had fallen, and there was no appeal. But there was one thing he could still do. One final act. He would find his son. He would apologize. And he would do it publicly, so Daniel would know his father meant every word. Richard's granddaughters, Emma and Grace, girls he had never met, discovered his plan. They submitted the audition tape. They convinced Daniel to attend, telling him only that something special was happening. They became the bridge between 2 broken worlds. Subscribe now and leave a comment. Because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. The night of the audition arrived. Hollywood's Dolby Theater was packed. Millions watched from home. Simon Cowell sat behind the judge's desk, pen in hand, ready to evaluate another hopeful dreamer. When Richard Moore walked onto that stage, Simon saw what everyone else saw, an elderly man in a simple dark suit, moving slowly with quiet dignity. "Good evening," Simon said, his tone polite but detached. "What's your name, And what brings you here tonight? Richard stepped closer to the microphone. The spotlight felt heavier than any courtroom had ever felt. His hands were shaking. His voice cracked as he spoke. My name is Richard Moore. I'm 73 years old. I was a judge for 41 years. And I'm here tonight because I owe someone an apology. Simon's eyebrow lifted. The audience murmured, whispers spreading like ripples across water. Something in the air shifted. This wasn't a typical introduction. This was something else entirely. An apology? Simon leaned forward, his curiosity genuine now. To whom? Richard's eyes scanned the audience. Searching. Hoping. Fearing. Row after row of faces blurred together until... To my son, he said, his voice breaking. Daniel. He's here tonight. Somewhere in this audience. And I haven't spoken to him in 30 years. The camera found Daniel in the front row. His face was pale, drained of color. Sarah gripped his hand so tightly her knuckles turned white. Emma and Grace, the granddaughters who had orchestrated this moment, were crying before the performance even began. Richard looked directly at his son. I know you didn't expect this. But I'm dying, Daniel. And I couldn't leave this world without telling you the truth. The music started. Soft piano. A melody Richard had practiced for months despite his failing lungs. And then he sang. His voice wasn't perfect. It wavered like a candle in the wind. It broke on the high notes. But there was something in it that silenced every whisper, every cough, every rustle in that theater. Authenticity. Truth. Raw, unfiltered truth. He sang a melody about fathers and sons, about time lost and words unspoken. But he had rewritten the lyrics as a confession. As an apology. As a plea from a dying man to the child he had failed. I was blind, I was proud, I was scared to be weak. I built walls when I should have built bridges. I gave justice to strangers and silence to you. And now I stand here, broken, asking for what I never gave, forgiveness. By the second verse, tears were falling across the audience like rain. Heidi Klum covered her mouth, mascara running. Howie Mandel looked away, blinking rapidly, unable to watch. Sofia Vergara pressed a tissue to her eyes. But Simon Cowell didn't move. He sat frozen. His pen had fallen to the floor minutes ago, forgotten. His jaw was tight, muscles clenched. His eyes were locked on Richard, but his mind was somewhere else entirely. Because Simon knew this story. Not the specifics, but the shape of it. The long hours building an empire. The missed moments with his son Eric. The fear that success might cost him the people who mattered most. He saw himself in that trembling old man, and the reflection terrified him. The song reached its final verse. Richard's voice was barely a whisper now, his strength fading like light at dusk. The cancer was winning. His body was failing. But his spirit pushed through. I don't ask for more time. I don't ask for another chance. I only ask that you know, I loved you. I always loved you. Every day. Every hour. Even when I didn't know how to show it. Even when I was too proud. Even when I was too blind. I loved you, Daniel. I loved you. The final note faded into silence. Complete, suffocating silence. 4,000 people holding their breath as one. And then Simon Cowell did something no one expected. He stood up. Slowly. Deliberately. He walked around the judge's desk, his footsteps echoing in the silence. He stepped onto the stage, breaking every rule, every protocol, every expectation of what a judge should do. The producers backstage were frantic, voices crackling through headsets. What is he doing? This isn't in the script. Someone stop him. But no one moved. No one dared. Simon walked directly to Richard Moore. The old man was trembling, barely standing, tears streaming down his weathered face. His legs threatened to give out. His breaths came in shallow gasps. Simon didn't speak at first. He simply placed his hand on Richard's shoulder, a gesture so small yet so profound. Steadying him. Acknowledging him. Honoring him. Then he turned to the audience. To the cameras. To the millions watching around the world. "I've sat behind that desk for over 20 years, Simon said, his voice uncharacteristically soft, stripped of its usual authority. "I've seen talent. I've seen ambition. I've seen desperation and dreams and everything in between. But I have never, not once, seen courage like this." He turned back to Richard. "You didn't come here to win a competition. You didn't come here for fame or a recording contract. You came here to win back your son. And that is the only victory that matters." Simon looked toward the front row. Toward Daniel. Their eyes met across the theater. "I don't know your story," Simon said directly to him. "I don't know the pain you've carried for 30 years. But I know this: your father is standing on this stage, in front of the entire world, telling you he's sorry. He's risking humiliation. He's risking rejection. He's using his final breaths to say the words he should have said decades ago. Not everyone gets that chance. Some of us lose our parents before we ever hear those words. Some of us become parents and repeat the same mistakes." Daniel was sobbing now, his body shaking. Sarah whispered something in his ear. His daughters looked at him, waiting, hoping, praying. And then Daniel stood. He walked toward the stage. Step by step. The audience held its breath. The cameras captured every tear, every trembling movement. When Daniel reached his father, the two men stood face to face for the first time in 3 decades. No words. Just silence. Just two hearts breaking and rebuilding at the same time. Richard reached into his jacket pocket with trembling fingers. He pulled out a folded piece of paper, worn, yellowed, fragile from years of handling. The letter. The goodbye letter Daniel had written 30 years ago. "I kept it," Richard whispered. "Every day. I read it every morning. I fell asleep holding it every night. And every single day, I wished I had been brave enough to come after you." Daniel took the letter, his hands shaking. He looked at the words he had written as an angry 18-year-old boy who felt invisible. And then he did something no one expected. He tore it in half. Then in quarters. Then let the pieces fall to the stage floor like snow. "That boy is gone," Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. "And so is the father who let him leave. We start over. Right here. Right now. Whatever time we have left, it's ours." The theater erupted. Standing ovation. Tears. Applause that seemed to shake the walls and rattle the rafters. 4,000 people on their feet, crying, cheering, witnessing something that transcended entertainment. Simon Cowell stepped back. He didn't press the golden buzzer. He didn't need to. Because what had just happened was bigger than any competition. Share this story and subscribe. So moments like this are never forgotten. Later that night backstage, Simon sat alone in his dressing room. The door was closed. The noise of celebration was muffled behind thick walls. He held his phone in his hand, staring at a photo of his son Eric, a little boy with bright eyes who didn't yet know how fast time moves. He made a call. "Hey buddy," Simon said when Eric answered, his voice soft. "I know it's late. I wanted to tell you something. I love you. And I'm proud of you. And I promise I'll always be there. No matter what. No work, no show, no meeting will ever be more important than you." Richard Moore didn't win America's Got Talent. He never expected to. His cancer took him 4 months after that night, quietly, in a hospice room filled with flowers and photographs. But in those final months, he wasn't alone. Daniel was there every day. Sarah brought home cooked meals. Emma and Grace, the granddaughters he finally knew, read him stories and showed him their drawings. The silence that had lasted 30 years was replaced by conversations, laughter, and tears. But they were the kind of tears that heal rather than wound. At Richard's funeral, Daniel stood before the gathered mourners and spoke about his father, not the judge, but the man. "My father spent his life delivering verdicts to others," Daniel said. "But in the end, he delivered the harshest verdict to himself. He knew he had failed me. And he did the hardest thing a proud man can do, he admitted it. Not in private. Not in a letter I might never read. But on a stage, in front of the world, with nothing but his broken voice and his whole heart." Daniel paused, composing himself. "That night, on that stage, my father didn't just apologize. He taught me something I'll carry forever. It's never too late to try. It's never too late to say I'm sorry. And it's never too late to come home." Simon Cowell has never publicly spoken about that night. But those close to him say something changed. He leaves work earlier now. He takes more trips with Eric. He calls his mother more often. He holds on a little longer when he hugs the people he loves. Because sometimes, the greatest lessons don't come from success stories. They come from watching a 73-year-old man risk everything, his dignity, his pride, his final breaths, for one chance to be forgiven by the son he had failed. And that is why this moment will be remembered. Not as a performance. Not as an audition. But as the night Simon Cowell stopped everything, and remembered what truly matters. Some verdicts are delivered in courtrooms. Others are delivered on stages. But the most important ones are delivered in the space between a father and a son, when the walls finally come down, and love, at last, is allowed to speak.